Okay, last time, like we said, we were looking at Mesoamerica. We want to stay in this new world, so to speak, and we're going to move a bit south. South America. We'll take a look just briefly at some of the geography of South America. We're going to stick mostly, our discussion will stick mostly to the western part of the continent, primarily from the Andes Mountains to the Pacific coast. The Andes Mountains are a rugged set of mountains. You might see them as a kind of continuation or being connected at least to the Rocky Mountains of North America. The entire Pacific Ocean is ringed by a lot of mountains, a lot of tectonic activity, earthquakes, volcanoes, that kind of stuff, okay? So we actually can see that in what some people have described that as a ring of fire. All around the Pacific, there's a ring of fire, of earthquakes, volcanoes. Certainly you see that here. You look at how rugged these mountains are in this picture I show you of the Andes Mountains. So they are rugged mountains. They are quite tall, quite lofty, and they go down roughly the west side, not far from the west coast of South America. Now, another major feature besides the Andes Mountains to the geography in South America is the Amazon River. The Amazon River is in fact the most volume of water of any river in the world flows down the Amazon. And the area around the Amazon has been for a long time very much like, say, a jungle or a rainforest, heavily vegetated, and could be, difficult to travel, that sort of thing. It's made the news recently. This part of the world, a lot of it's controlled today by Brazil. Anybody know what's been happening down there in Brazil over the last few months? Yeah. Fires. A lot of fires in the Amazon. And so a lot of people are getting concerned that the rainforest is burning. Part of it is done by developers. In other words, it's being burned on purpose rather than by accident, as you might think. Because they have all this land, and it's pretty fertile land, but of course with all the vegetation and all the trees and everything that's there, you can't really build things there, you can't really put in farms, that sort of thing, agriculture. So it's actually, there's a process whereby people are clear-cutting the forest, the rainforest, and sometimes to get rid of the vegetation, they just pile it up in big piles and set it on fire. Okay? That's one way to do it. When I lived in North Carolina, which I did for a while, I lived in what I like to call the swamp. Well, I didn't just call it that. It was called the Great Dismal Swamp. That was the official name. I thought it was pretty well named. But anyway, when they would decide they were going to build a road or something, there would be a lot of vegetation, at least over where I lived in eastern North Carolina, pretty far east. They would clear cut that stuff. One of the ways they do it, they clear cut it all, put it in huge piles, the vegetation and trees and stuff, and they'd set it on fire. These stuff would burn. And that was a way to get it out of there, get rid of it. Because a lot of it was very muddy there. It was hard to get big equipment in to haul that stuff away. And then what they do is they put these little fences made out of plastic. They would put like black plastic, to keep runoff water from in the area, and then they start dumping sand and other things in there to make a road bed, and then they build up a road. Because when I was down there, they were expanding the roads in that area. So that's where I've seen this kind of thing going on. So we do have the Amazon River to the north with jungles or rainforest, the Andes Mountains down the west coast. And so, while we think of South America as having these amazing rainforest, jungle, very wet areas, the other thing we probably don't hear much about is the fact there's a lot of deserts there as well. Deserts along the western coast. Because here's what happens when predominantly the wind, the weather, will come from the west and move east, right? Because of the way the earth is rotating. Well, anyway, it's not a science class. But that means that the clouds and the moisture are coming off the Pacific and they're moving across South America. But the first thing they're going to do is they're going to come to the mountains. Very high mountains, can be over 10,000, even 12,000, 14,000 feet. These are huge mountains. So the clouds, the moisture has to rise up very high to get over those mountains. When it does that, it means it doesn't rain much on that side because it's right in there where everything is rising up high. Then once it gets over the top and gets up there high, then what happens, a lot of that water condenses and then it falls on the other side of the mountains. And that's why, we have all that wetness and the Amazon River and all that. So that's sort of the reason why the geography works that way. Now, what we're going to focus on in here are the areas up and down the Andes Mountains, from the coast to the Andes Mountains. We're not going to focus much on the Amazon basin, in part because we don't really know much about it. We don't, there wasn't that much interaction, say, with the Spanish with it. We don't have written records of it. And still today, although that's fast disappearing, but the people who lived there are very remote. And so a lot of their history, their past, is simply unknown. And has never been written down, that kind of thing, in large measure. And the really large, well-known civilizations are along the coast. So, in pre-Columbian South America, we don't know of any written language in pre-Columbian South America. Now, remember we said we did have some hieroglyphs in Mesoamerica. Anybody remember one of the groups that did have some hieroglyphs? Oh, you're talking about Harappi. Yeah, that's way over in India, though.
Okay.
Yeah. The Mayans, I heard somebody said Mayans. Is that you? Mayans is one of them. Yeah, there's a couple of them where we have that. The Mayans probably the most famously. Anyway, we don't know of any in South America. Does that mean it definitely wasn't there? Well, guess we can't say that. We can just say it's not been found. Okay? So consequently, we don't know a lot about the history of it. What we do know, like in all of these where we don't have a lot of written records, we have to determine from the archaeology, from the remains, and then later on when the Spanish show up, the Spanish are writing things down. And then we can read that, their impressions anyway. All right. Well, let's take a look. Thanks. Here is South America. Okay? And the mountains we're talking about are all along the coastline here, near the coast here. So when the weather, the rain, the moisture comes this way, It rises up over the mountains, and then it drops down into this area, and that's why you see all these tributaries that flow into forming the Amazon. Very wet here in this area. The Andes Mountains. Last Christmas time, I went to South America. I'd been up here. I'd been to Colombia and this area, but I'd never been down here, and so I went to South America. I think I told you I speak on cruise boats, right? I think I mentioned that in class. And so we actually flew to Santiago, and then went out to the coast and got on a cruise ship at a place called Valparaiso. Then we sailed south all along. Chile is a very long, narrow country. Sailed south along Chile, all the way down here, went through this Strait of Magellan, and went to Tierra del Fuego, the southernmost point of South America, in this area called Patagonia. And then came up this way. We went out here to the Falkland Islands, then came up here. We went to Uruguay and then went to Buenos Aires. So had a couple of stops in Argentina. Then from Buenos Aires, flew back to beautiful Florida. Okay. So that is very interesting. I'd read about it, but I'd not been there before. But it's a very big place, South America. Well, let's take a look then. Here's just focused in on the Amazon. Again, like I said, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but I want us to see. Here's the mountains: Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Bolivia. As the moisture comes up and over the mountains, it's dropped on this side, and you see all these large tributaries flowing into the Amazon. The Amazon is the second longest river in the world. The longest river in the world is the Nile. We've already talked about the Nile some. It's 3,900 miles long, but it does have the greatest volume of water of any river in the world. So what is it? The largest amount of water flowing down and out of it. Okay, more than the Nile. The Nile is longer, but doesn't have as much, not wide, narrower, not as much water. All right, so that's what dominates this area. This is primarily today Brazil. Climate of South America. What is it like there? Well, when I went to South America at Christmas time, I was actually going in their summer. Because remember, once you get past the equator, the seasons are reversed. So what's winter for us, like December, January, we think of as being winter, would be summer for them. It was still pretty cold because you're very close to Antarctica. Saw a lot of penguins. A lot of penguins down here, yeah. Mother penguins with little baby penguins, nested. You could go up and you could see them. And then there's different kinds of penguins. So I saw like 3 or 4 different kinds of penguins as well. So a lot of penguins to be seen. But notice also it's much drier down here. Look how humid, how wet. In this area, no dry season. It rains all the time here. Here, very short dry season. Here, a dry winter. But then when you get down like this area, you see it's semi-arid and arid down here. Very dry. And also, it can be very cold, especially in the Andes, where it's permanently frozen. You get up high enough, you've got ice all the time. Tundra, like you would think about having up in, like around the North Pole, they have here. So there's a lot of mixture. We tend to think South America, we think, like really hot, tropical, rainforest. But there's a lot of different climates there, huge mountains. All right, so let's talk about some of these early cultures that are there. One is called the Chavín. It's in central Peru, and we see that it was around from about 1200 to 200 BC. 1200 to 200 BC. And you can see some of the area, how mountainous it is. They did build canals. This is one interesting thing because, their water is limited, so they built canals to channel the water that they have to where they need it. They built stone temples, temples made out of stone. And they would have religious ceremonial centers that they made as well. So this is what archaeologists mostly find: the ceremonial centers, the canals, and temples. There are some stone carvings that have been found of their deities. Again, we don't have any written records. We assume these are some of their gods. And there are 2 small pyramids that have been found. 2 different kinds of pyramids. Probably the larger of which is dedicated to the sun, the smaller to the moon, if it's anything like what we see in Mesoamerica. So part of what you do is, you find what you find. You don't have the written records, so you have to hypothesize. You have to make an educated guess. What is this? Well, we find something similar to this in Mesoamerica, and it's dedicated to the sun and the moon gods. Now, this shouldn't surprise us because, as we have seen, deity revolving around nature is very common. Like I said before, when I was talking about, I guess maybe I was talking about Mesopotamia or maybe India. When your livelihood, when your life, when your existence depends upon if your crops survive, then you're a lot more concerned about the weather. You stay in tune to it. Right? For us, we're going to go to the grocery store, we're going to go to the restaurant, and we're going to have lunch. But for these people, they have to make their lunch. They don't have to make their lunch, they have to grow their lunch. So you have to be planning ahead, thinking ahead. If this rain doesn't fall, if these crops don't grow, if we can't get this kind of harvest, somebody in my family is going to starve. Or be very, very hungry at least. All right? So this is why the sun and the moon controlling this kind of thing is very important to them. Now here's another of these civilizations, Moche, 150 to 800 AD. I like this little ceramic vessel. What's it look like? Corn, right? Ears of corn. They look like ears of corn. You got the mama ear of corn, and you got the baby. You got the young ears of corn. Well, this is corn. Since corn is the main foodstuff of the New World. Remember we said that it's not wheat, it's not barley, it's not rice. It's corn. We find in many cultures corn goddesses. All the way up in North America, for example, the Cherokee people have a corn goddess. This is a goddess of fertility. Why are they concerned? They want to have a lot of corn. Why do they want to have a lot of corn? Because they want to be able to eat. If we don't get much corn, then everybody's going to be hungry. So I just like this one because here they've actually made a kind of representation of the corn goddess with her corn babies or offspring. So they're emerging from the corn cobs with little faces. I think it's pretty neat. Halloween's coming up. So I'm hoping somebody in here will dress up like this. Walk around campus with your head like a thing of corn, and then you could have like 2 fake things of corn and walk around. What do you think? It might be kind of tricky to make it, but I think it'd be pretty neat. Got to be creative with it. Well, anyway, just a thought. Maybe we're not, I guess, do we have class on Halloween? Maybe we should have everybody dress as their favorite, thing that we've talked about so far. Say favorite person or deity or whatever. Well, maybe get some extra credit.
Okay then.
I'll have to look. I'll look and see. This could be fun. This could be interesting. I got to see the dates. I don't know. I never know what the dates are. There's a calendar somewhere here. Your phone has everything, Bill Gates, he thought of everything. That is on a Thursday. Halloween is on a Thursday. We have class on a Thursday, so I think we should do something special. Anyone come as the corn to goddess? Well, just think about it. Well, the Moche River is in the northern coastal areas of Peru. Now, I would have to say that, we did talk about the Bible. I knew somebody that had a party like this once, had a thing like this, and this is what I want to avoid. They had somebody come as Adam. And, we got to follow all the rules, you know what I'm saying? Adam before the fall. He showed up at the costume party. It's supposed to be biblical characters. And he was, and my mother would say in his birthday suit. That's the suit you have on when you're born. Anyway, birthday suit. Yeah, never heard that? A birthday suit? Yeah. That's what my mother had a lot of colorful expressions, of not all of which I can share with you, but that's one of them I can. The birthday suit. So anyway, this guy showed up in his birthday suit, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing?" So I'm Adam. So yeah, none of that. We can't have any of that. But a historic character would be acceptable, as long as it's in SEU approved attire. Modesty. Well, anyway, northern coast of Peru, peanuts, potatoes, corn, cotton. All of these items are New World products. We've mentioned some of this last time, I think. Well, I know I mentioned potatoes. For example, the Irish didn't have any potatoes until after 1600, when the potatoes were taken and then cultivated in Europe. Peanuts, of course, where would we be without peanuts? Peanuts. A lot of people with less allergies, I guess. Some people are allergic to peanuts, but anyway. Peanuts are interesting plants, by the way. I had a great uncle who would grow like strange things sometimes for fun, and so he decided he wanted to try to grow peanuts. This is up in Indiana. What's that?
Aren't they a type of bean?
It is. What happens is it grows like a little bush, like a little plant about this big, and then the top part sort of flowers and gets stuff on it, and then it gets very heavy, and then it comes over and that top part falls down into the ground, and that's where the nuts really develop. It's called a ground nut because it's actually got to dig them out of the ground. But it kind of starts on the top and sort of, as I remember it, it wasn't coming from the roots. It was actually coming from the top that would fall over into the ground. I don't know. I might be wrong on that. We'll have to check. But anyway, peanuts are, yes, a kind of bean, really, like legume kind of thing. When I lived in North Carolina, they grew a lot of peanuts down there. They like to boil them. Eat them boiled. Ever eaten boiled peanuts? I'm not a big fan, but they really like them. Boiled peanuts. I remember I bought raw peanuts from a guy. I was just driving along, and there was a field, and the guy was selling raw peanuts. I thought, I want to get some of those peanuts. So I got some, and then, of course, what most people do is they roast the peanuts. So I put them in the oven, and I tried to roast them. But, it did not, I don't know, I didn't do it right. Because it did not turn out that well. So I decided, you know what? It's a lot cheaper just to go buy a jar of peanuts than everything I did. So I had to buy them and to bring them, had to roast them, then you got to then in the end, it would be great if they tasted great, but then it was like, Also, because the stuff you buy has a lot of salt in it. Peanuts have no salt. So really, I like peanuts that have salt on them, so you have to salt them as well. Or assault them, which is what I often do. I assault things. Well, artifacts show us scenes of everyday life. We see that from the artwork, we go for the archaeology and the artwork, we can see that there was warfare. In other words, depicted in the artwork. Even human sacrifice. And obviously here we can see a fertility goddess. We also know that they developed or built a complex system of irrigation, because remember, like we said, on that side, on the west side of the Andes, the rainfall is very limited. So you got to make the most of the rain that you get. If you're trying to raise crops, like potatoes and peanuts, you need corn. Corn especially needs quite a bit of water. What brought it to an end? Some people say El Nino. That means a little kid came out and beat him up. No. Yeah, El Nino, of course, is what? What is El Nino? Yes, go ahead.
There's El Nino and La Nina, which is like the representation of the storms and monsoons that happen.
Yeah, so it's, there can be it's a pattern of storms that come. They kind of come in cycles. So sometimes the water level is higher, and other times it's lower. So some people think El Nino, like a lot of water created flooding and stuff, and messed up. They were probably already declining, and that was it. So there you go, El Nino. You got to watch out for El Nino. I think that's the name of he's a wrestler. He's a wrestler down in Mexico. He wears a mask. He calls himself El Nino. No? It's probably somebody else. Jack Black. Wasn't Jack Black in that movie called El Nino? What was that one called? El Nacho? Is that what it was? El Nacho? Oh, Nacho Libre. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, it's got something nacho in there. You're making me hungry, man. I'd like some nacho. All right. Well, here's something I thought you might like to see. Here is one of the tombs, one of the burials they found. Take a look at this thing. This was found in about 1990, so what? I guess now 30 years ago, in Peru. Some royal burials that were here from the Moche civilization. But take a look how this is mud bricks. They built this chamber, right? And then they would backfill over it. But look how elaborate it is. You got all the bricks here. And then you see how they put wood in here to kind of support it. And then notice in the center, this is the most important guy right there. Look at all the stuff he has. The gold, the jewelry. But then around him, 1, 2, 3, 4 people buried. Wives? Maybe. Now here's the thing, when the important guy dies, maybe you should hope that you're on vacation, because it sometimes means other people are going to be buried with him. And maybe you hadn't just died. What always gets in my eye is this guy up here. See this guy up in the wall? I don't know exactly why he's there or what's going on there. But then notice you see all the vessels. This would be food, I assume, food and drink, things that will be needed in the next life. So obviously they believed that there was an afterlife and that you would have your status in the next life and that you would need people with you. This guy might be one of his slaves or something. Like, guy's going to take care of him. This might be his family or wives. This is the kind of thing that you do find, which of course is very intriguing. Well, anyway, it would be interesting to study this more carefully. Now here we go. Here is a bottle. Sometimes they're called portrait bottles because it's felt as though they are portraying perhaps a famous, royal person or a priest or something on the bottle. This again is a kind of drinking vessel that I doubt you would use every day. It's a ceremonial thing because it's fancy. But notice, the head is hollow. That's where the liquid would go. And then you've got this sort of circle here and then a tube at the top where you can drink from it. Right? It'd be very difficult to fill it,
Yeah.
I think. I think the only way you can fill it is through the same tube. And then it'd be difficult to clean it. Just imagine, you put your milk in there for breakfast and we'll make sure you rinse it out right away because the milk gets dried down here. It's gonna hard to get it out, right? So right, this is not the kind of thing you're going to use commonly. This is going to be for a ritual ceremony. Maybe put some wine or something in there and you drink it as part of a ceremony or something. Anyway, just to give you an idea of their artwork, of their ceramics, how elaborate it can be. I mean, this is pretty fine stuff that they're making here. All right, let's move to the chimu. Chimu. This always makes, I don't know why it shouldn't, but it makes me think of the chia things. You know what I'm talking about? Cha-cha-cha-chia. You know what I'm talking about? Cha-cha-cha-chia. They have like little heads and they put the seeds on there and the stuff sprouts. Like they have Einstein. You put the stuff on there and Einstein's hair grows. They had one of Barack Obama. I couldn't believe it. I mean, they came out with it really quickly after he was elected, so they had to already be making it. They got all kinds of stuff. You can Google it. Probably can still buy it. But these chia things, I mean, they started as like sheep. Started like chia pets, sheep and stuff like that. You put it on there, it's supposed to be like the wool of the sheep, and then there were dogs and stuff. And then he started doing people, like the heads of people, like Einstein and people. So anyway, I don't know why I think of that. It's got nothing to do with this. I guess it's just the chi part, the chia. And of course, you know what those seeds are now. So what everybody eats now. It's the quinoa. You eat the quinoa. You know what I'm talking about? The quinoa. That's what the chia stuff is. It's quinoa seeds. And you just spread them on there and then you water it and the stuff sprouts. So you could eat the stuff off your chia head. I mean, I guess, trim it off. And I don't know what people do with that quinoa stuff. But it's edible. Anyway, I like this mask. I think this is really pretty neat. Again, a good thing for Halloween. Huh? How about you make it with, you could make it like with foil or something, and then put it over like cardboard. I don't know, put it over something and make it. Well, anyway, just a thought. Paint it kind of gold. Put little eye holes in there. I don't know. Or it could be a medallion you wear. Well, the Chimu, 1100 to 1400 AD, their capital is at Chan Chan, the mouth of the Moche River. So it's in the same area. This is one of the largest cities in pre-Columbian South America. Estimated population about 30,000 and 12 square miles. How was the city built? With adobe. Now, again, when we use the word adobe, that's what we kind of use in this part of the world. Like, let's say you go to Arizona or New Mexico, you might see what people would call adobe buildings. What is adobe? Anybody know?
Is it a clay?
It's made from clay. It could be a house, a building. I mean, it's really much like what we saw in Mesopotamia with mud bricks. Adobe is a kind of mud brick that's made in the New World. I think it's pretty much the same idea. And then it's just called adobe. So adobe are mud bricks. So you can make a house, you can make a wall, you can make whatever out of adobe. And so here they're making their buildings out of the mud brick. Well, you can kind of see it back here. Where's the picture of here? You see this? I'm thinking this is mud bricks right here. See how they've stacked it up there? Yeah, so there you go. That's a good example. All right, let's get back to where we were. Here's where we are. So, on it, we see that there were friezes. Friezes are artistic paintings of sea creatures and other animals. Again, we're not sure what happened to this culture, but it appears, we do know there was a lot of earthquake activity, because remember I told you the ring of fire around the Pacific, there's a lot of earthquakes, and obviously, like, if you got a mud brick house or whatever in an earthquake, it's not going to do too well. So, or floods, like if you have El Nino kind of, you get a whole lot of water coming, that's also going to take out mud brick walls, buildings, foundations. And we see that they had also built canals as well. So this whole thing was taken out, ends around 1400, 1450. So it's rather, 300 years. But an interesting culture here in the same area. Again, all of these are kind of up near Peru. Chimu. I don't know, it's kind of catchy. I don't know, something different about it I like. Well, then of course we come to the most famous. This is the one everybody would know about, right? The Incas. The Incas are the most famous. The Incas are 1200 to 1535. You remember what I said last time? If I have a very specific date for the end, you know what that means. It didn't end well for them. And by the way, it's the same as what we saw with the Aztecs. In this case, it's going to be the Spanish. Same kind of thing. The Spanish come, the Spanish take over, the Spanish have superior weapons, gunpowder, and disease. So again, the Incas are really at their pretty much their height of power as well. They have a capital that's up around 10,000 feet. Cuzco, in the southern part of Peru, way up in the mountains. Have you ever been up 10,000 feet? Anybody here been up 10,000? Yeah? Not in Florida, unless you're in an airplane. Well, there's mountains in Colorado, for example, that I don't know how many there are, something like 15 of them or something that are over 10,000 feet. What some people want to do, their goal is to climb all of the tenors or whatever they call them, all of those that are 10,000 feet and above. I went up one of them, Of course, I didn't climb the whole thing from the bottom, but I did ascend up the final part over 10. And when you get up that high, the air is thin. There's not as much oxygen in the air. And so you can get short on breath. You can kind of get worn out faster. This is why some people who want to compete in like the Olympics and stuff, they go and train in a place that's high elevation and run and stuff and condition their body, because then you have to learn to take more oxygen in, like your blood and stuff. And then if you move to where the competition is, it's close to sea level, like here in Florida, you're going to actually have an advantage over the person that just trains here, at least for probably a week or two. But of course, most of those competitions only last a couple of weeks. So that's what some people have done. Other people have actually, and this is a little more controversial, they'll go there and then they'll have them actually take their blood out, draw their blood out after they've been in high elevation for 2-3 months practicing. Take their blood out, and then when they get down to the competition, then they have them, give them a blood transfusion. That's a little more controversial, because then they're going to have in there the kind of blood that can absorb oxygen. But it's their own blood, so they're not actually taking drugs. So they say, well, they're not taking any drugs, they're just their own blood.
Isn't that what that one biker did? On the famous
Lance Armstrong?
Yeah.
I think he was actually taking drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, he might have been doing the plasma stuff too, I don't know, but I mean, he was actually, I think they determined he was actually taking some kind of steroids or something. Yeah. Oh, testosterone. Oh yeah, that's how he got the cancer probably, people think, yeah. What's that? Blood loading? Doping. Yeah, that could be where I think you put in extra plasma or something, so you have more red blood cells, so you can get more oxygen. Anyway, he was maybe doing a lot of high-tech stuff, right? Some of which they determined was illegal. I don't know if they did all of it. Anyway, well, I just mentioned it because this is very high up, and you get up there, and you could get lightheaded. You really could, if you're not used to it, and you're exerting yourself, like climbing up a mountain. Or running or something. So there you go. You want to get in good shape. Take a trip to Colorado. Start running up every 10,000 foot mountain and do them all in 2 weeks. By the end of that, if you're still alive, you'll be in better shape, I guess. Well, I can't prove that, but we'll see. Well, the idea here, let's see if I can say this name. Pachacuti, he who transforms the world. This is one of the Inca gods, and the idea here is that this is the god that sort of controls the world. This is actually a statue. This is a modern statue. This was not an ancient statue, but it's placed here to remind us of these gods. And the idea here is Pachacuti is the leader who is connected to the gods, descended from a sun god, and the guy who really transformed the Incas into a major empire at around 1440. But remember, they end in 1535 when the Spanish show up. So, Cuzco was rebuilt in stone by him, and this was the capital. It's up 10,000 feet. And there is a sun temple there. So there are three important leaders of the Incas. Pachacuti, Topa Inca, and Huya Inca. Something like that, right? These are the three best known. Again, we don't have written records of this, but we do have Spanish who wrote about it. We also have a source who was Incan, but he learned Spanish, and then he wrote down a lot of the things he had been told. Okay, so we do have some records of Inca ideas, Inca religion, Inca history that way. All right, so the Incas, these guys are very interesting. So let's move on. Here we see their empire. Notice how long it is. Here we see this is 1,000 miles, right? Something like that. 1,000. It's over 2,000 miles north to south. That's a long ways. But very narrow. Look at that, probably 300 miles wide, 400 miles wide, but over 2,000 miles long. Excuse me. So we see the Inca Empire then, and notice Cuzco here, and of course probably the most famous of the sites today, Machu Picchu. You probably heard of that one. Tourists go and visit there now, even though it's a quite remote area. So here is our last independent Inca emperor. He's taken hostage in 1532 and executed in 1533 for plotting against the Spanish ruler Pizarro. Atahualpa. Atahualpa. So we see, you know, I guess you can't mess with Pizarro. So the empire then would run today from Ecuador south all the way through much of Chile, not all the way. Chile goes down even further south. And from the ocean, like from the Pacific, to the edge of the Amazon rainforest, so the mountains. So from the mountains to the ocean, from the north in Chile all the way, south in Chile all the way up to Ecuador. Now, one thing about the Incas is that they were very, very systematic. They were very, I guess we might even say perhaps cruel or dictatorial, but certainly organized and structured. They had territories which they divided into provinces, and then they would have, each province would be ruled by a kind of governor. These governors were all related to the king, to the Inca ruler, the royal family. So keep it all in the family, so to speak. And to keep it very systematic, each province had 10,000 residents. So it wasn't by sort of square miles or something, it was by population density. So each ruler had 10,000. So I guess if you had a city in there, then you would have a smaller geographic area. We kind of do that, the way I think what it reminds me of anyway. It's not exactly the same, but we have congressional districts that are based upon population. And so if somebody in Congress has a district that they are elected from that are all, at least in theory, roughly the same amount of population. Okay? And that's why after you do a census, like we're going to do next year, all those things will get shifted. So everything's up for grabs at that point. Because my assumption will be after next year, Florida will gain congressional seats. I'm just guessing, but I bet they do. And places like Ohio and maybe Pennsylvania, Wisconsin and stuff, they'll probably lose congressional seats. Because basically people are moving to the south. I guess they don't like snow. They want to be where it's warm. I guess they like alligators. I keep waiting for alligators. Now that would be good for our costume party. Somebody come as an alligator. Have to open your mouth to be able to see to walk, something like that. I don't know. I don't know how to do it. I'm just coming up with an idea. Alligators would be fair game, or a crocodile, that would be Egyptian. Come as King Tut. Like a mummy, kind of thing. Well, anyway, there were so many people. We were doing the whole world. Tinsuyu. Well, anyway. The world of four quarters. The idea is that the world was organized into four parts. It's all organized. We ought to have our parts all organized as well. All right. Woo, we got to move on. Everybody ready? Some people don't look very ready, but I guess we got to move on anyway. Seems like most people are almost awake, so that's pretty good at this point. I said almost. Well, what about the Incas? What did they achieve? What did they do? How did they do all of this? They built an empire, and they built one of probably the most amazing things they built were roads, highways, I guess we call it. And I don't mean like I-4 kind of thing, but they built 2 roads. Remember we said they go like 2,000 miles, their empires, 2,000-mile stretch of road through the mountains and a 2,000-mile stretch of road along the coast. So they had two main roads, north-south. They had some roads that would connect those two roads together. Okay? And here you see a picture of, at least in one of the cities, one of those roads or paths. In some cases, they are stone paved. In other cases, of course, they also had to build a lot of bridges. As you might imagine, in the mountains, they built rope bridges to get across, canyons and stuff. Pretty amazing stuff they did. It's estimated they built 25,000 miles of roads. That's a lot of work. 25,000 miles of roads. And they built their capital city as well. The roads would go all the way from Colombia to Santiago, Chile, which is a long haul, like I said, I think over 2,000 miles there. And as I mentioned a minute ago, two main roads, north-south, one through the mountains, one along the coast. These are not the kind of roads that you would use on a family vacation. These were military roads. These were government paid for. And, so if you wanted to use these roads, you had to have permission. And, if you weren't like in the military, if you weren't like using it officially there. And because along the way, they also built what we might call rest stops, pit stops, whatever you want to call it. They would have a rest area, which had storage areas, which would have some water, some things like that, so that you could keep moving. A supply station, whatever you want to call it, to facilitate rapid movement down the road. They had a lot of McDonald's. I had a McDonald's like every 20 miles. No McDonald's. Suspension bridges. This is a huge undertaking and I think a major achievement. Like I said, they're for military and government use. They're not for, of course, there really wasn't any sort of commerce, local commerce and pleasure. Like, oh, I'm just going to go out here and take a little vacation down to the coast or something. That people didn't really have that kind of freedom. And they could run messages quite quickly, 140 miles in a day. Imagine that. If you could move a message by foot 140 miles in a day. It's sort of like, maybe you've heard about in the western part of the U.S., they had the Pony Express. You ever heard of the Pony Express? Where you have messages and you have guys on horses and they would run up and then they would like throw the bag to the next guy and he would take off and he'd go to the next one and so forth, and they could get these messages quickly. So anyway, these runners were taking the messages. Now, again, the messages were not written. This is the part you got to think about. So how are we transferring these messages? I guess orally? Now, they did have a system whereby they tied knots in strings to keep records. I think I've got that here. Well, that's probably maybe the next one. Here are some pictures of Machu Picchu. Someday, perhaps you can go visit. I've not visited there yet. I'd love to go. But notice you're up in the mountains here, and here is the ruins, and here are the mountains. And of course, that's looking out over the mountains. Looking back up the other way, it looks like this. Built around 1200 AD. First outside sort of person to know about this was a guy named Hiram Bingham, an American, who then writes about it. He found it about 100 years ago, 1911. I guess 108 years ago. And people still go here today. This is probably one of the biggest tourist things, that a lot of people want to get to. Because it's out of the way, remote, but a lot of people want to go there, right? You got your bucket list? Yeah, bucket list. Mine, on my bucket list is, I want to make it over to Plant City. Someday I hope to make it to Plant City, Florida. Nah, I'm just kidding. I've already been there. Anyway, it doesn't mean it's not on my bucket list, though, just because I did it. Inca culture. Here we go. Llamas. Llamas. Anybody know the name of the llama? What is it? Alpaca. Yeah, you know, alpaca. Oh, these are llamas here. They're very similar. Alpacas are a little smaller. You know the name of the llama? No? You never saw the movie? The guy had the pet llama? And he gave it lasagna? What's that? What is it?
Yeah, Cusco's nice too.
Oh, you're talking about the
Disney.
cartoon. Yeah, the Disney thing. Yeah. The name of the capital, that's right. Now, I was thinking about Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh.
He had a llama, right? What do you call it? Remember? Tina. Yeah, Tina. Somebody give yourself a bonus point. An imaginary one. Tina. So I like to think this is Tina right here. Well, the language is called Quechua. But this was the official language. Everybody had to speak this language for all official things. So everybody was taught this language. One way the Incas kept control is they made sure everybody spoke the same language. Right? So, you know, if we're going to be able to communicate, we've got to be able to speak the same language. Very regimented life. For example, if you wanted to get married, you found that certain special someone, probably over at the, what's the place over there? The coffee place over there? Portico, yeah. You were hanging out in Portico, and you were up at that second floor, and you looked over the railing, and there was the person of your dreams, waiting in line to get a half-cap, double steam, mocha, cappuccino, pumpkin, guacamole, coffee. See, why don't we put guacamole in the coffee? Everybody loves the guacamole. Everybody loves the coffee. I'm going to make a new drink, the guaca coffee, or the coffee guaca, the coffee mocha, coffee guacamole, coffee mole. I don't know. Cafe mole. Cafe mole. Ooh, that's good. And you make it a green color. If it wasn't green enough, put a little food dye in there, and then everybody, it would be great, wouldn't it? No?
It looks similar to the matcha tea.
Yeah, it looked like all this. People drink weird stuff now. So I think they would go. I think people would go for it. People get all these weird drinks, and I look at it and I think, I saw somebody yesterday, and I said, "What is that?" And they said, "Well, it's a liquid beverage." I said, "Okay." But, you know, it kind of looked like something I've seen in the doctor's office. That's all I'll say. Well, the marriages are regulated. Women cared for the children, very sort of traditional, weave the cloth. However, for the men, universal male conscription. What does that mean? Universal male conscription. Anybody know? Yeah. What does that mean? Yeah, well, you know, a draft is, a draft is where you are selected to be conscripted. Universal means everybody. There's no draft to it because everybody's in. I've often thought maybe, of course, this is probably me after teaching like 30 years of college. Maybe everybody who's 18 should just go in the military for like 2 years, 2 to 3 years. Then come out after that into my class. What's that? Yeah, they do that in Israel. There are places, Israel, the Middle East, Jordan and stuff, people mandatory have to be in the military. In Israel, it's both men and women. You have to be in the military, every single person in the country. It's just a thought I've had. You know, I don't have no power. It's not going to happen. Don't worry. But that's what this is. But it's only men. The men have to be in the army. So that means that they had a large army, 200,000. They have no wheeled vehicles that we found. So they use the llama. By the way, you know, if you're up in the mountains, a wheeled vehicle may not be the best kind of thing to have because it's going to roll down the hill. A llama, not going to roll down the hill very easily. I'm sure you could try to push the llama over, but the llama's not going to like it. Tina, she's watching you. That's what I think. So is her friend Stella. They're both watching you very carefully. Keeping their eye. They don't trust us. Basically, I think that's what that's saying. They don't trust me. With good reason. Well, how about this? Let's talk about way up here in the mountains. Look at this, 20,000 feet. 20,000 feet, 20,700 feet. Now that is a really high mountain. And here's base camp, 16,000 feet. Up in this very high area, 19,000 feet, 20,000 feet, they have found mummies, Inca mummies. They're called ice mummies. At least that's what they're called in the magazines, the ice mummies. So I got a picture of those. Just showing you where they are and showing you how high those mountains are. Twice as high as the mountain I went up. That's unbelievable. So it's always cold up there, always frozen. Look at these people up here. They're digging out the ice mummy. This is an artist's rendering of the ice mummy. The ice mummy is actually a human sacrifice. This is a girl, I don't know, she's 12. I don't know how old she is. She's roughly in that age. 10 to 14. She has been strangled, actually, and placed in this with goods to be an offering to the gods, way up here in the high mountains. They might have whacked her on the head. I think they did whack her on the head. I've got an x-ray, I think, next, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Here's some kind of dress that they would have, the kind of pottery they have. Very colorful stuff. A lot of reds, a lot of yellows, gold color. And buried with her were these items, like a doll. It looks like a doll, and a little llama, little toy llama. Tina. Toy Tina. But there's what she looks like, permanently frozen. So this is the name of the article, Peru's Ice Maidens, unwrapped and been frozen for hundreds of years. So you can see they did an x-ray of the head, that they hit her on the head here. And that's what caused her to pass out and die. And then, of course, was frozen up here in the mountains. This was a kind of an offering to the gods. So human sacrifice of the Incas. Well, we talked about this. I told you there's no writing system, but they do have this system of knots. And there was a recent article, boy, just like the last week or two, where somebody has done some research on this and tried to figure out, how they might have used these knots to keep records, even tell stories. But it's much like a memory device, if nothing else. If you think about it, you got the knots here, boom, 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 then, okay, this one reminds me I should do this, 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 and this. If you think about, I don't know, like say, for example, in the Roman Catholic tradition, right? They have a rosary, which has beads. You know what I mean? Muslims have sometimes called worry beads. These beads where they go around has usually 33 beads. so they can remember the 99 names of Allah. So they go around once, flip it again, do all the 99, which are really 99 attributes of Allah. So it's a kind of memory device that I think the knots do. Plus also I think it's keeping track of numbers and things. Anyway, this is the way they do it. It's still somewhat mysterious, but I think there were also oral tradition, stories, sort of poems, poetic things that were told. By going through the knots, it reminds the different parts of the story. Okay? I mean, it's kind of like me and my PowerPoint here. You know, as you might notice, I don't have any notes. I just put up the PowerPoint. That reminds me of what it is I should say. I go, oh, wait a minute. Oh yeah, I'm going to show you an ice mummy who had her head hit here next. I think I remember that. And then I go to the next thing. So I put it up there. I put this up there like this for a couple of reasons. One is it reminds me. It's sort of my way of remembering, but it also keeps me on track. At least tries to keep me on track, so I don't wander too much. And it puts words up here and spells them, whereas otherwise you would be asking me, well, how do you spell that? That kind of thing. So it's a visual for you, spelling, pictures. It's also a reminder for me, and reins me in so I keep moving. I don't ramble too much or, you know, fall over in my chair, that kind of thing. Okay. All right, Spanish in South America. Okay, here's our bad guy. His name is Pizarro, 1532. He conquers the Incas, much in the same way as, remember the guy in the north, what his name was? Remember? Starts with a C. Cortez. In fact, I believe they're brother-in-laws. They married sisters. So maybe that's why they're so angry. No, I'm just kidding. Steal weapons, horses, gunpowder, and diseases, much like we talked about last time, so we don't have to go over all of that. And they brought disease to the Incas. Well, I want to talk then for a few moments, since we have a few moments left, 4 or 5 minutes, to mention North America. This is an area which I would assume most of you are familiar. Here's a place close to where I used to live. This is called Serpent Mound. So what we have in North America are a lot of woodland areas. It's called woodland, a lot of overgrowing with woods, a lot of native people living there, farmers. And this kind of earthworks, which is on the ground, you kind of see it looks like a snake here, swallowing an egg. I don't know if you can see that. This was built around 1000 AD. Hopewell culture, 200 BC to AD 500. So Serpent Mound, over 1,300 feet long. I took students there a few years ago, and an interesting place to visit. Yeah?
How did they make those?
It was made out of earth. Yeah, I mean, it was just manual labor. I don't know how they ended up making the design and making sure it came out right, but basically somebody has excavated down through it. It's a kind of pile of clay, and it has some rocks in the center. And when you're walking alongside of it, the mound is probably about 3 to 4 feet high. Yeah, so I mean, it's not real huge, but certainly you can see it from the sky. They're taking this picture in the winter when the trees are off. The leaves are off the trees. So here again is just the climate of North America. Wet. See the Southwest very dry. We won't bother with that too much. Here again, the temperatures. Here again, 42 different groups just in this part of North America, eastern woodlands. In the Southwest, you find some pretty interesting things. There's the Anasazi. These are known as the ancient ones. And some of them were cliff dwellers. You see up here in the cliffs, these caves up here. This is actually where they stored grain, make sure nobody stole the grain. And have places like Chaco Canyon, Pueblo, Bonito, Mesa Verde. Anybody been out there and seen any of these? Pretty impressive. You get a chance, if you're in New Mexico, Arizona, you ought to go take a look at these. They're pretty impressive settlements. A lot of them made out of adobe, some out of stone. So here is adobe, sun-dried clay bricks, or Pueblo is what the buildings are sometimes called. And again, in the Southwest, look at all these different groups, over 50 of them listed here. Here is Pueblo Bonito in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. Semicircular structures they built here. Here's some of their pottery and ruins. All right, we'll leave it there for today. I hope you have a good weekend.